Go to the cloud, my friend. Happy Saturday morning, I guess, or afternoon. I don't have to say Sunday morning for our. All I have to say is good morning to our Australian and Japanese friends here. Um, Dan won't be with us today, but he'll probably look at this after he gets loading it up and everything. Um, I'm busy having fun trying to do his work and mine at the same time. Um, but without further ado, I um, I want to introduce. We have two guest speakers today, and I, as usual, I check with the presenters. Oh, before I forget, let's all wish Daryl a happy birthday this morning.
Oh, happy birthday.
Oh, happy
Daryl.
birthday.
Happy birthday,
Happy
Daryl.
birthday. Yeah. Let's
Another one
sing.
bites the dust.
So, having sidetracked a little, at least I didn't forget before he had to go do his other duties. As usual, I ask people what information would be good for introductions for you. And if I listed all the stuff that both Mike and Joe sent me, they wouldn't have time to present. But we'll try to go. I tried to summarize these. Our first presenter, or our one of our two presenters, the first one I'm going to talk about, started calling in the early 90s. He was a music teacher in the schools and then started calling doing that. I'm sure he'll fill us in more on this stuff. Then he started calling for adult clubs also, and all of a sudden got too busy doing teaching music and calling, and had to make a choice between the two and quit teaching. He's been full-time calling, started full-time calling in 1972. That number looks familiar. I think I was alive then. He's called in 49 states, 7 Canadian provinces, calling for beginners, obviously, if he's talking about schools, through C4. Not as obvious. That's beyond my memory capabilities. Has taught many caller schools for about 40 years, has run a note service, recorded on Gren. I know Gren, but I wrote Green. Green River was on Gren. And FTC, Full-Time Caller, which is a sub-label of Gren. Originally, was it from Toronto, Joe?
Originally outside of Rochester, New York.
Right. Oh, you were in Rochester. Okay.
Yeah.
And now is living in Alberta, Canada. And also calls in Florida in the winters. So I should say, let's have a hand for Joe Uebelacker, who's nice to have you joining us, Joe.
Yeah.
And before I'm going to let you talk, I want to talk about our second presenter, who has had lots of experience in this field also, has started calling as a teen around 1960 also. Been calling for over 60 years. Went to became a full-time caller in 1974. Traveled for 40 years. Now is slowing down. He's only calling for 5 local clubs. I don't know if that's slowing down, Mike. Also has calls a lot in schools, which he's calling a business because he's really made a business of calling in schools, which we're going to talk about today. Is taught beginners classes every year since 1972. Calls mainstream through A2 and has dabbled in C1 in the past. I like the way you put that, Mike. I used to call C2, but yeah, it was dabbling, not
exactly.
Has recorded on Silver Sounds Records. Lives in Spencerport, which is near Rochester. You guys must have known each other back then.
We did.
By the way, just as an aside, how's Betty Carmen doing?
She's doing real well. She had some health problems. She's not really dancing or cueing anymore, but still keep in contact with her.
For those of you that don't know, Betty Carmen is the wife of a recently passed away caller named Jerry Carmen. And Jerry and I Jerry helped me get started an awful lot. We used to do dances together where he'd do the patter and I do the singing call. He helped me a lot in the very, very, very beginning.
We had 3 local callers and 1 round dance cure a few years ago pass away in the same year.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
And unlike Joe, who winters in Florida, Mike has chosen to winter in Arizona and has for the last 5 years, enjoying lots of good dancing, I think more than calling, right?
Yeah,
Anyway.
I call a little bit, but not much. We go out to dance mostly.
So let's have a big hand for Mike Callahan.
Thank you.
And now with what time is left, let's let you guys oh, the presentation, the topic today. We've had people talk about this in the past and bring it up and, calling a school here and there now and then. But to have successful, continual, repetitive programs in schools, there was a lot of interest. I've called for 1 or 2 college clubs, but never a regular program in teaching in schools, and have tried. This should be informative to me. Whoops. Oh, darn. I got 2 more people in the waiting room. Okay. As I say, I had too many things going on here. And I still have to figure out how to let Joe share his screen, but go ahead, Joe. You can. Joe.
Yes. Oh,
take over.
Okay. Yeah. So how many have called in schools? Just show of hands. You got 1, 2, 3. Mel and Bill. Okay. And hopefully all those experiences were positive. Some aren't always positive. Some leave you thinking, I'm never going to do that again. Other than that, now Mike made much more of a business out of it than I did. I sort of got in by the back door because I was already teaching in school, and then from there, because I was part of the State Teachers Association and things like that, it was easy for me to get into schools. And I did the New York State Phys Ed conferences each year, and like I would do the Friday night dance for the teachers, and to try to stir up their interest. And then on Saturday and Sunday we'd do clinics all day on how to present this to the kids. And from there, of course, that led to many more bookings to do it in the schools. Mike, what was your situation?
I had quite a unique situation here in Western New York because New York State required a rhythms and dance unit for all elementary and middle school kids. That was part of the Phys Ed program. And a lot of schools in this area were square dancing already. So I didn't have too much of a problem getting into schools. There was one gentleman who was doing a school about 50 miles away from me, and he asked me if I would be interested in doing it. And so I did. It was a 100-mile round trip, but I was starting to call full time, and I was glad to get the business. So I would drive 50 miles, call 8 40-minute sessions, and drive home and maybe have a dance that night. But because of this, Phys Ed teachers have a big network. And like Joe says, they have these conferences, not only local conferences, but state conferences. When they see something they like, they tell other Phys Ed people about it. So I was doing this for this particular year. The next year, he invited some other of his Phys Ed friends to come and watch. And I got a little bit more business than that. And pretty soon I said, maybe this is some kind of thing I should look into. So this was before the internet. And what I did for quite a few years is I would go through the phone book each year and get all the area schools, probably 200 at least, and send a little resume to each one, mail them snail mail, talking about my experience, about the benefits of square dancing and so forth. And I would start getting business from this. Okay. So it wasn't as though I had to, approach a school and say, do you want to do square dancing and all this type of thing? It was already there. And they liked the music I used. The sound was a lot better. The kids were more interested in it. And from there, it just kind of snowballed. So that's really how I got into the school systems. By the way, we'd like to, when we make the presentation here, we want to, if possible, keep all the questions to the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
How have you done, Don? Have you got us in there yet?
Yeah.
There we go. Good. All I have to do is, there we are. Here comes the share.
Yeah, you have to do your part.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, let me put it up to the slide show. Okay, so between Mike and myself, we'll share the pages there. I might as well, I guess, since I'm talking, I might as well start the first one. These are the job requirements. This is like talking from the HR department sort of thing. Okay, so for this job, you have to be able to travel, set up and start classes sometime starting at 7 a.m. Okay, after that, then you have to be able to stand for anywhere from 4 to 6 hours or more at a time. And you also have to be able to talk and call constantly for 4 to 6 hours plus. On a sideline there, sometimes you won't get lunch because they forgot that you eat food as well. So you be prepared to have a sandwich in a bag or something, not peanut butter, because that's, you got to watch out for that. All those kinds of things that we have to look out for. Also, you have to be able to not rely on site calling. If you do site calling, try to trust a bunch of 5-year-olds. Anyhow, if you're going to do singing calls, which they want to do, you have to use, design them using 5 basics or less. There are some calls, singing calls out there that you can use, like the sailor song, head leads cross over by the opposite stand, that kind of a thing. But very few, very, very little. Although Dick Ledger did produce an awful lot of very easy basic calls, and so did I think Bob Osgood. People out in the West Coast did quite a number of ones. But you're better off doing your thing. Okay. Also, you have to not be fussy about styling or timing, because they're going to do their own thing, and if you want them to do everything properly, stick to adults. Also, you have to be able not to be bored teaching or repeating basics over and over for days, because that's basically what's going to happen. Now, how do I get to my next screen? Just there we go.
Can I say something about that too, Joe?
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay. If you could go back a minute.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Okay. You got to make sure you use your voice right, because if you tend to get, lose your voice after an hour or two because you're constantly talking, you're going to have real problems towards the end of the day. So voice is very important, how you use your voice, your diaphragm, that type of thing when you're in the schools. Okay. And as Joe said, you can't be fussy about styling or timing. If you get upset, the kids will know in 10 seconds that you're upset. So you got to kind of be real even keeled, even tempered. You got to relate to the kids, talk to them when they come up after you start calling and they ask about your equipment, you got to relate to them, have a smile on your face and that type of thing. So it's real important to have a good personality like that if you're interested in going into the schools. Okay.
Next. There you go.
Want me to do this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. It's real good to have children's dances or simple line dances that can be taught in less than 5 minutes. Baby Shark, good one. Cupid Shuffle, Chicken Dance, Heads, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes, They still do the hokey pokey and they love it, especially the little ones. So all these things should be in your toolbox when you go into schools. And maybe if you're working with the older kids, have some of the more current line dances they like. You have to be able to design a teaching program for special ed kids. A lot of times when I went to schools, one of the classes was a special ed class. And they would come in and, you know, we might do some simple line dances. Most of the time they had aids. Each kid had an aid, so it's real easy to set up a square and do some real, you know, circle left, circle right, forward, up and back, and that type of thing. And they loved it. I love working with special ed kids. You got to be able to design your own teaching order to coincide with the grade level of the students you're working with. You know, we all have our Color Lab basic and mainstream list, but a lot of times you have to skip around that list in order to be successful with teaching kids, especially the little ones. Okay. Able to use modern music. Most of the kids, especially when you get up into the high schools, middle schools, they love to hear more of the rock tunes, of modern music. But once in a while, they like to hear some of the traditional music also. Okay. Because for them, that's square dancing. Again, able to relate to the level of the students you're working with, K through 12. And you got to design programs. And after you've done this, you know, for a couple of years, you almost can design your own program, knowing what the level of kids that you're working with. Okay, Joe, go ahead.
Okay. Oh, one of the things too about your voice, it's the same thing as we are with adults. You want to stay away from cold water. I know it feels really good on the throat, but it constricts it, takes the blood away from the throat, and you're in trouble. You'll get in trouble. We won't talk about the alcoholic disadvantages, unfortunately, but cold water is out. So also, you know, you might think about having milk for breakfast or whatever, things like that. So anyhow, on marketing, it says marketing 1. Okay, so the use of the school website, staff emails to get into schools. Mike will tell you more about that one. But networking, talk to teachers, friends, dancers about the best way to get into their school and who to contact. And if someone gives you a contact and whatnot, do follow up. Communication on all fronts, whether it's square dancing or whatever. Communicate. You know, and do it right away. Don't leave it go. Jump right on these things. Otherwise, either it passes you by or people think you're not interested. You want to make up resumes and send them out. Some schools, you know, they might hesitate a little bit when you're not a teacher already, but you know, let them know you are a teacher, because if you've been teaching adults and whatnot, you're a teacher. Check out teacher in-service workshops, phys ed conferences. Now, most schools, the Teachers Association will have a teachers in-service workshop. Some will have one once a month. Depends on the school and what they like to do. Find out who's in charge of the workshops and let them know that you'd be willing to come in and show the teachers what it's about. Have them get up and do dancing. There's, you know, it used to be with many of the older teachers, the attitude was, you know, I've been teaching for 30 years. What can you tell me? Well, let's do it and we'll see your left from your right. And you'll find that many times teachers are not any better than the kids, myself included. Okay, do you need a degree to teach square dance in schools? No, you don't. But again, you'll have to check what they want for credentials. You may have to get you most likely will have to get a police check on that to go into the schools. You know, does your state or province require phys ed programs to have a dance or rhythm unit? Most of them, somehow or another, especially around 3rd or 4th grade, require some form of dance based on their civics sort of a program. Anything to add to that, Mike?
Yeah, sure. Sometimes the music in phys ed programs and kind of get together and have you come into the school, because, you know, this is part of music also, right? The kids have to know, it helps them know rhythms and that type of thing. As far as the school websites, if you Google a school nowadays, almost always you can come up with the staff emails. And when I was doing these resumes, I never ever sent it to administrators. I always sent it to the phys ed teachers themselves, because they're more or less in the trenches, if you want to say it that way. So what I would do with these resumes, you know, I'd introduce myself. I'd tell them the benefits of square dancing: teamwork, mind-body coordination, listening skills, the social value, the exercise, the music, dancing to the beat. And one of the most important things is that kids don't have to be an athlete to square dance. Okay. Most kids that are shy and not into sports can be successful square dancing. And again, the special ed, you could emphasize that you have a program for special ed kids also on these particular resumes that you send. So, but send them to the teachers. Don't send them to the administrators, because they get tossed out. Joe mentioned about teacher in-service workshops. A lot of phys ed areas do have at least one every year somewhere in their area. And if you can get into that and, you know, do like a one-night party at their phys ed conferences, this will help a lot to get you into the schools. Again, you need a degree. New York State, you don't need a degree to teach square dancing in schools. I don't know about some of the other states. But now you do have to be fingerprinted by the police in order to get into the schools. Go ahead.
Okay, years.
So I think I mentioned how I got started pretty much with that one school. As you go to the schools, you might be able to hand out promotional material to the phys ed people that are there. Okay. Does your promotional material appeal to your audience? Well, you got to have something that appeals to the phys ed type of a program, some of the things that I mentioned before. Okay. Do you explain the advantage of having you to teach square dance other than it might be fun? Well, again, we have all these different things that especially phys ed people are really interested in: the teamwork, the mind-body coordination, the exercise, and so forth. Okay. Who do you approach? Again, try to approach the teachers more than anybody else, because if they would like what you're doing, they can approach the administrators as far as like funding and that type of thing. But really approach the teachers first. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so now are you ready to teach square dancing in schools? You know, do you have unlimited patience? Okay, and that's what it's going to take. We almost could put that on top of every slide we have there, because it's going to take patience like crazy. There's always going to be the kid or kids who are going to do goofy things. However, don't be afraid of the school, like, you know, the toughest high school in your city or your neighborhood. Many times those kids are the best kids for square dancing. They may look a little tough, a little rough, scary, intimidating, but many times, as long as you're treating them as equals, they step right up to the plate. In Ontario, when I was living in Ontario, I had a high school that was the toughest one in the city, and those kids were fantastic. They were self-policing. You know, they took care of anybody that caused trouble. In other words, they had my back, so that's good. So the other thing is, do you have a plan? Make sure you have a plan. If you don't have a plan, you have nothing to deviate from to start with. So, like, what are you going to teach first? You know, are you going to circle left, couple one, couple two, couple three, whatever? How are you going to get them paired up? Are you going to do like the Grand March kind of a thing? Are you going to just leave it up to the teachers? I know Mike would usually have the teachers get them in groups. Sometimes the teachers like to do that because they know who not to put into a particular square with another kid. And what do you tell them first? What's the, you know, don't start with a big history lesson or you lose them right away. You know, the trick is, and it's the same with adults, get them moving. As soon as they're moving, then you can start doing things. Where are we going from there? Okay, yeah, Mike, you want to talk about getting them squared up and anything
Sure,
like that?
sure.
Go ahead.
Again, patience, patience, patience. And if you don't have patience, the kids pick up on it real quick. So this is something that you really got to look into yourself about. You know, do I like to work with kids? Do I have patience with kids? A lot of times, you know, if you have kids of your own, you know what I'm talking about. What are you going to teach first? How are you going to get them paired up? Okay, a lot of times what I did is a lot of demos. The kids would sit down on the floor. This is more or less, you know, elementary. You know, I'd introduce myself. They'd all be in a circle. I'd approach the teacher and I'd say, now, well, first of all, I'd say, I need 8 kids who are really good listeners, who can really follow directions. And of course, everyone would raise their hand. But then the teachers would pick out, of course, who they thought would, you know, do a good job. We'd get them in a square. We'd, you know, for the real little kids, they'd say, how many sides does the square have? And they'd say 4, you know. So I'd introduce the square part of it. Some of the teachers would put X's on the floor where the kids were supposed to stand in the square. You know, we'd say, bow to your partner, bow to your corner. We tell them who couple number 1, 2, 3, 4. We'd say, number 1, bow to your partner, bow to your corner, number 2, and you go around that way. Number 1, go forward, up and back. Number 2, go forward, up and back. Number 3, go forward, up and back. You do it that way. So these are real basic things that you got to do with especially with the little kids. The bigger kids, again, up to maybe 4th or 5th grade, the teachers will get them into squares. After that, they'd pretty much say, okay, let's, you know, let's just, you guys are old enough now. Let's get our squares together. And of course, you know, they're used to doing this already from previous years. All right. And that helps a lot. And, you know, of course, some kids would sit back. So the teacher would, you know, get them into squares, that type of thing. One thing that I'm not a disciplinarian, the teacher is. So, you know, you can put up with a kid, you know, having a little fun here and there. But if you had a kid that was really having issues, I would say right over the mic to the teacher, hey, could you talk to this kid a minute? And, you know, leave it up to them for as far as the discipline is concerned. And that, you know, I didn't bother with that, with discipline at all. So, but I think that's about it for that slide.
Okay.
Oh, is this mine?
Well, yeah, that's yours, Mike.
Okay. What's your ultimate goal? It's to have the kids have a good time, be successful. When they have a good time and they are successful at what they do, they enjoy it. And the next year you go, or the next time you go, they're a lot more accepting of you and that type of thing. Okay. Have you ever thought about the mindset of the kids that you're dealing with? Excellent. You know, some kids are there saying, I don't want to do this. Some kids are there saying, hey, this looks like fun. So you're going to have a lot of different mindsets of the kids as you go in. The main goal for you is to get everybody up, dancing and having a good time. How about potential follow-up? Once you get done with the school, you might email the teacher, say, hey, thank you very much for having me in. Hope it was a success. I'm now starting to book dates for next year. If you're interested, please give me a call or email me, that type of thing. A lot of teachers, phys ed teachers, start planning their next year's schedule around June or July. So this is an excellent time to follow up with teachers that you've already, and kids and classes that you've already been to in schools. Okay. Do you have extra material for teachers to use as preparatory and post-event units? Well, you can bring in the list of basics. I believe there's some videos on the internet now that you can have them Google. There's a lot of material out there. for teachers. Okay. Post-event units. Many schools I went into, I'd be there for a week. And then on the Friday night, they'd have a family night. And this is where the kids would bring their parents. We'd do, square dancing, line dancing. And it was really good that the parents saw what the kids learned that week. A lot of them were just amazed. And so this did well for the school also. So this is something that you might suggest to the teachers. Say, hey, I can be here for a week. Why don't we have a family night on Friday night? And they bring their parents, they do some line dancing, do square dancing, and it really does well for the school. Okay, Joe.
Okay, yeah, I got a couple of things off of that too. To get them to listening, which is our main goal on all of the square dancing with kids, adults, you name it, is to pay attention to what the caller is saying rather than to guess at what's coming next. And when you do that, the very simple thing is like Mike said, especially with little kids, square identification. Couple one, go up to the middle and back. Couple two, go up to the middle and back. Couple three, go up to the middle and back. They're expecting couple four now. So you say couple number two or one, something else. And of course, couple four will do it, and all the kids, they all say, no, you're four, and they all get, in a little tizzy, but they have fun with that. So you can do that from time to time. Don't overdo it. But it does give them subconsciously, if not anything else, the idea that, he can change it any way he wants. So pay attention. I also, at some point there, do explain the difference between traditional barn dancing type, visiting couple thing, and how, you push the promotion, but you kids are much, better than just doing visiting couple. You're out to, we can have you all doing something all at once. Like Lori said, what she did the grand square thing, these are great things to make them feel really good. As far as extra material for the teachers to use, I would always leave them a copy of, and by the way, if you can't see it, I don't know if that's backwards. That's a book that I wrote for kids in school. Okay, it's square dancing for kids of all ages, and it's good for adults too, or seniors or whatever, nursing home type things. It has the information in the book actually, right from what to say from the very first thing, like drills to learn square identification is all every line that they want to say. I've even had kids who think they want to do it. They say, well, I can do that. I give them the mic, I give them, open up the book, I say, there you go, all you got to do is read it. And they'll call, and some of them do quite well. So I have that available if anybody's interested eventually. Let me just go to the next page here.
One of the things that I was just thinking of that is kind of neat with especially little kids is having a Simon Says square dance.
Oh, yeah.
So you say, Simon says, bow to your partner, bow to your corner. Oh, no, Simon didn't say that, and they all start laughing. Simon says circle left, and Simon says circle right. Simon says go forward, up and back. And then you might put another call in without the Simon Says, and they forget, and they all start laughing. And that's kind of a neat little thing.
Yeah, that's good. I hadn't done that one. I like that. I might do that with one of the adult clubs. Whoops. Let me go back one here. Whoops. I'm having a time with my mouse here. Let me go back. I'm going backwards. Okay. So what's the difference between teaching a class and teaching for a one-off event? Okay. Well, if you're teaching for a class, of course, you may, like, with Mike, you may get kids in schools that keep getting you back, but you still have to start over at the beginning with most of them. It's just that with the kids that know most everything to start with, things will go faster. And the biggest thing is these are one-off events that we're doing really. So each time can be somewhat different. It doesn't really matter, but you're not expecting them to remember from, necessarily from day one to day two. You may get other kids who are out the first time So you have to go over things. That's where the patience comes in again. You have to consider what the age level is. You know, are you going to teach them how to do a swing like you do adults? I usually didn't. I would do that towards the high school level because once you get to, don't forget that, you know, around age 7 and 8, they don't want to touch each other to start with. By the time they're in grade 9 and 10, you can't keep them from touching each other. By
That's
grade
true.
11 and 12, they're much better. You know, you can go ahead and teach them how to swing properly and make it fun, because there's that centrifugal force that they can utilize, and they like to do that. And they're full of energy. I mean, at all ages. But so that's the kind of a thing. Do you have a list of calls to present? Make sure you have your list of calls. See in what order are you going to teach them in? You know, one call will lead to another call, to another call. Look at it, and as Mike said, look at it from their angle as a new dancer, just like you do with adults. What is that person thinking when you say, you know, if you're teaching you turn back, are you going to say couple 1 and 3 pass through and now turn around? Well, turn around is a 360-degree thing, not 180. You turn back is 180. So you have to be careful, because you're going to get somebody there, and the kids are really good at this. They will catch you up on semantics really easily, and it can be fun. I mean, you know, they can trip you up. Be patient, accept it, and have fun. And the idea of what order you teach the calls and why do you teach them in that order? Do you have, like when you teach, if you're going to teach ladies chain, are you going to teach it all at once? You know, the head 2 ladies pull bow with the right and the boys do this and that. Well, no. Maybe you've done wheel around first. That's the action. And then pretty soon a wheel around with some hands. Then you can get into, you know, that's called courtesy turn. And eventually then you can say, now we can do the ladies chain, you know. And, you know, use some shtick with this. You know, head 2 ladies, you know, we're going to have you change, go over to that other guy and be his partner. You know, and guys, you got to pay attention, because she's going to pull by and she's going to come to you, and then she's going to see someone else in some other square that looks prettier, and she may just leave the square. So you got to rein her back in, do the courtesy turn. So, you know, have some reasoning for what you're doing, and how strictly do you adhere to the rules. Well, you know, sometimes you have to bend the rules to get something done, and that's okay. You know, they're not going to become professional square dancers like our adults. You know, nobody's going to pay them, so they don't care. They want to have fun, and they got their energy. They're going to keep moving. I think Daryl, oh, gee, name escapes me. Daryl from the West Coast put on a YouTube a video of some of the kids he was just teaching, and you can see the energy. You can't control, you can't rein that in. I did one with Rensselaer Polytech in New York, and these are kids kind of like the MIT student type. And after 45 minutes of running them at about 150 beats per minute, I said, okay, let's take a break. Kid in front of me turns around and says, why, are you tired? I said, oh, that's a challenge. So, you know, you got to be ready to jump on it and go to it. So, okay, Mike, your turn.
Yeah,
You want the
I
next
have,
slide?
go ahead.
Okay.
Elsa, okay. I have different calls that I use with different age groups. Usually kindergarten and first grade, you use about the same calls, and maybe second. Third and fourth grades, you can advance a little bit, you know, and use different calls. Fifth and sixth, you can more or less get up. I start using grand square usually about fifth grade, if it's a real good fifth grade, but probably sixth. And then 7th and 8th is when you can really start, you know, teaching more. And the high schools, you can do about anything with them. But I try to group age groups that way with different lists of calls. Okay, and that seems to work out pretty good, those groups of age groups. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Oh,
This one
okay.
mine?
Yeah, this one's yours. Yeah.
Okay. A lot of things got to find out from the schools. When do you start? Where do you park? A lot of them have parking lots that are just for certain students, and it's not, if you park in a teacher's parking, you might get towed away. You got to find out about all of that stuff. What are the school protocols for an outside person? Do we have to have ID? A lot of schools, in fact, all schools nowadays, you have to show ID, and they'll usually give you a badge to go into the schools, or a visitor's thing. You need police clearance. Here in New York State, again, you have to be fingerprinted before you go into any schools. Okay. When do you get paid? Or you can talk a lot about getting paid, but most of the schools will have a voucher or something like that, and you might not get paid for 3 months. Okay. How do you get paid? Usually by check. A lot of the schools, who does pay? Well, some have budgets for visiting artists. Some of the schools I work with, the student council paid for it. Some of the schools, the parent teacher association paid for it. So there's a lot of different ways that schools will pay visiting consultants. That's what you are, is you're a consultant for that particular school. What do you do if you get booked back in? As far as, well, of course, you take it if you can. But really, when you get booked back in, that means you've been a success for that school. Okay. Go ahead, Joe.
Okay. Yeah. All of that he said, that's good. Kind of backtrack on one of the things I mentioned about the difference between teaching a class and teaching a one-off event. Actually, for either one of them, the music you use is important. I'm not sure if that comes up in another slide, although I put these slides together. But you definitely want to use music that is, when you're teaching, that is very low key. Not a bunch of rattly stuff, not a bunch of fiddle music, not anything that makes them feel like they've got to dance and propel forward. Something like Big Sombrero, I know that's a singing call, but it's a very low key record. But it's got a bit of a melody, or something that's rhythmic. Definitely, again, you don't want to do boiling cabbages, or something they're going to dance whether you say something or not. So you have to watch out what you choose that way. That works the same for adults, of course. Okay. Whoops. Did I go down? No. Well, let me see if I can get this to go down. Oh, there we are. Okay. Things to think about. Yes, you'll most likely need that police check clearance. Anyhow, use of demos in teaching. That's always a good thing, especially if you see a square where, two couples are doing something quite well, and you want to have the others do a show and tell. You just have to be careful not to single out anybody. And boy, don't ever. My philosophy is don't ever single someone out for doing something bad. Okay, you'll lose confidence in everybody.
Same with adults.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. You don't want to do that. You want to have a short, and I mean short history of square dancing and the recreational aspect of it in today's world. Let them know that you can go anywhere in the world and dance this stuff. Once you know a particular set of calls, there's cruises, there's holiday weekends. Do you need a wireless mic? In the old days, before we had wireless mics, no, we didn't need it. You don't necessarily need it, but it can really help. And again, do you have follow-up material for the teachers to use? Do you have music for them, some old records perhaps? Or I used to give them, dating myself, cassettes of some of the teach material from Sets in Order, so they could, continue to do it. It probably was illegal, but you know what? It kept them going. Do you have pre-session info material for the teachers? In other words, before you arrive, you know, it's really good to let the teachers know what you're planning on doing, how you do it, so they can, you know, participate and help. As Mike will tell you too, you'll get a situation where you have these kids. Say you're doing all grade fives in a big school, so period after period you got the grade fives or whatever the situation is, and all of a sudden you see squares full of a lot of adults or kids from the higher grades if there's a high school involved. Kids will skip classes, staff will skip free time and come in and dance. Some of them will bring in their class because they say this is educational. We want our kids in here too. All of a sudden you have twice as many people in there that you bargained for. So let the teachers know that, you know, you're fine with that. Now, if you're not fine with it, you want to tell them that too. And the last one there, be neatly dressed and groomed. You know, it's best not to show up in your jeans that you just painted the barn with. You know, have your hair combed and use the mouthwash so you know, you'll know right away if someone comes up to talk to you and they start backing up as soon as you start talking that you got bad breath. So you want those are very important things as a presenter. Okay, Mike, I'm sure you got something to say here well, you did see something about the demos, but go ahead. Your turn.
Yeah, you know, demos are very important in schools. I mean, you can't just stand up there with your equipment. You got to get out in the square with the kids and demo. I'll get right in the square. You know, I'll say to a kid, you know, take your spot for a minute, and we, you know, show you the different calls and that type of thing. And you know, the kids really kind of like it when the caller gets in their square. I mean, they think that's really something. Okay. Again, as Joe said, a lot of kids think of the square dancing as the, you know, in the barn and the hay and the cows and the chickens and all that type of thing. It's a recreation, and you got to tell them about the different aspects: cruises, square dance vacations, square dance weekends, that type of thing. So they know it's not just a hokey type of activity. Wireless mic, definitely got to have a wireless mic. I use it all the time. Be neatly dressed and groomed. You know, don't, as Joe says, don't come in jeans with holes in them and a baseball cap and that type of thing. You know, even little kids know when somebody looks professional, and you got to look professional even in the schools. Okay, a lot of the kids don't look professional anymore, but you being a leader and a caller and working with the kids, you got to be neatly dressed and groomed. Okay.
Yeah, by the same token, I don't know that you want to show up in your square dance outfit.
Exactly. Right.
You know, it's kind of hokey, huh?
Yeah.
Even today, you got to watch out who you're calling for.
Business casual, you know.
Yeah. Okay, let me see if I can get this to go down one here. Okay, got to use my mouse. There we go. There's yours, Mike.
Okay. How do you price yourself? Well, this is something that, let me give you an example. When the first school I ever did, I drove 100-mile round trip, and the school said, yes, we'd love to have you for a week, teach 8 classes a day, and we'll give you a substitute teacher's pay, which was $50 a day. And that's what I made. And I drove, 500 miles every day, taught 8 classes for $50 a day. But I was glad to get it. Okay. How do you sell yourself? Okay. Well, you sell yourself with the success that you have with each school. And that pretty much sells yourself when you're a success, when the kids enjoy it, when the teachers enjoy it, and when they say, will you come back next year? A lot of schools will have an invoice already made up for you. So, again, don't expect to get paid when you get done. It's usually, 2 to 3 months, because they have to go through an accounting system and a budget system and all that type of thing. Okay, Joe, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, sometimes all they want is on a piece of paper, square dance calling for, whatever date it was, and the price that you've agreed to or not, whatever it happens to be. So that's not too much. And let me get the page down. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. Okay. Whoops. Oops, go the right way. There we go. Okay, so who pays you? It might be a school budget, might be a phys ed budget, music budget, PTA, whatever. The other thing is, would you do a free gig to get your foot in the door? That's another thing to think about. Can you bring dancers into a student assembly for a demo? Maybe you're part of a community activities assembly program, something like that. And again, you'd want people to be dressed in different attire. Again, business casual is good. You might have one couple come in with their outfit. I would not do that myself, as far as having the attire, because even today with adults, I feel that we're driving more people away by saying you should. Let them get involved first. And of course, the kids aren't going to get involved the way adults do. So with the adults, yeah, we'll worry about that when that comes. Let them know that that's a possibility if that's their thing. But with the kids, no. And also, we never did touch on this, Mike. The idea that the girls can do the boys' part, and the boys can do the girls' part. It does not matter. It isn't a girls' boys. It's a bow and bell thing. Okay. And some of the kids, I've had kids switch parts even. So, let it go for what it is. Mike, you have anything to add to that whole list?
It pretty much covers what I say also. Remember one school I went to, I had a certain fee, and I had gone to the school, a number of years, and the next year's things were being cut out of the budget and all that stuff. So the kids had a fundraiser to raise money to pay me for the second day. I mean, that's how much they really enjoyed it. So fundraisers, again, like PTA, when I stopped doing the schools, mostly the PTAs were paying for it. Sometimes some of the schools had a phys ed budget for it, but most of the time it was a PTA, schools, student council, and that type of thing. And again, would you be willing to do a freebie just to get your foot in the door? That might work. You might say that on your resume, or when you're trying to get into the schools, say, yeah, I'll come in and do a class for you, just to get your foot in the door. Okay.
Okay. I think that probably does it. Well, one other thing about how to get into the schools, of course, is to do other events as well that the community asks for, Girl Guides or the brownies or whatnot, like the father-daughter events, because many times those people, the dad might be the principal, or they might be the phys ed teacher themselves, or the music teacher, or whatever, and they go and they have a good time with their kid, and they say, wow, this would be great to do in the schools. The way you do it is so much better than those old 78 records I have, where you can't even understand the caller, and it's weird stuff. We don't even know what they're talking about. Who's the girl from Arkansas, and who's your call? What is this stuff? So do those events if you want to get involved, and go from there. And I think that's probably the last one. Yes. And okay, so I'm going to do the stop share so you can see everybody good. There we go. And Bill has his hand up.
Yeah, you mentioned no boys or girls. How do you differentiate the left hand and the right hand dancer? Apples and oranges, or something similar?
Yeah. Yeah, the uglies and the pretties. I don't know. I use the term boys and girls, but just to say that it's because the girls can do the boys part. Left hand dancer, right hand dancer, if you want to say that. The lower grades, they don't even know left hand from right hand. So who knows? It's something that you will do yourself and figure out. But I wouldn't get all hung up on certainly I don't use bows and bells. I mean, even adults don't know what you're talking about when you talk about bowls and bells half the time.
A lot of times the teachers would give pennies, the colored things to the kids. One side would be red, one side would be blue. Say all the reds do this, all the blues do that type of thing. And that worked out pretty good.
So before we get into discussion any further, since we're so close to the hour, I want to do the official thank yous, and then we'll continue with discussion. But thank you all for coming. Thank you, Dan, for providing the link, and hopefully you get a chance to watch this because I'm sure you'll enjoy it. A special thanks to Mike Callahan and Joe Uebelacker for a great presentation. I know I learned a lot of things I wasn't expecting to learn, which is cool. I wish I'd picked your brains 30 years ago. I know a lot of you guys have questions about that you want to follow or dig deeper into some of these. I know several of you have, when you raised your hand, who's called in the schools before, have done some extensive things and might want to add stuff to it. So we'll start with, and also again, if you've only designated an hour for hanging around your computer this morning, feel free to go without feeling you're rude for it. So Joni's been waving her hand, so why don't you go continue?
Okay. Two things. When I taught at the elementary school, I asked the teachers to put a green strip of paper around their wrist or a blue strip, because I had girls with girls, boys with boys, girls with boys, backwards. It didn't matter. If you were green, my brain said G for girl. If you were blue, my brain said B for boy. And that way greens could do something, blues could do something, and I could keep it straight in my head that way. And that worked perfectly. As for music, I use Hakuna Matata, Bridge Over the River Kwai, which the kids thought of as Ants Go Marching To by Two, and The Lion King. And those went over really well with the younger kids. And that's basically all I wanted to say.
Baby Shark Hoedown on Silver Sounds is great.
I'll have to look that one up.
Go ahead.
Bill, you've got your electronic hand up.
It works better. Hey guys, Mike and Joe, I want to. You're bringing back so many good memories for me. As I've told several times, I'm no longer calling because I have a physical situation. I cannot travel like I did, but I called for 40 years. I started dancing in '77. I learned to call in '81 when I lived in Sacramento. Then I also was my real job. I was a school custodian at a K-6. So there was a teacher that taught square dancing to his 6th grade kids with the new Solomon Levi. Oh boy. And he was all by memory stuff there. And I was just learning to call, and I asked Mr. Taylor, I said, would you mind if I could come in and teach your kids, and I came in, and I'll tell you something, the change in their personalities when they were going from something they were rehearsing to having a live person showing them what to do, it was incredible. And I did a lot of schools. Also, there was a caller who lived in above Sacramento, a place called Yuba City. His name was Jack Murtha. And yeah, I see a nodding head. Jack, I would kiss the ground that man walked on. He was an educator himself, and he came out with a series of records. It was called the Diamond Program, and teachers would, in schools would get, and I had one that did this. These two teachers taught their kids through his Diamond Program, and then they brought me in to do a dance out on the playground. 40 squares of kids, all the ages, and they gave me a list of the calls that this Diamond Program taught them. And I did that for them there. It was a cold morning. I was freezing my, you know what off, but it was it was the most fun I ever had. And I loved working with kids. And of course, my first square dance club I had in 81 was a youth group. I had 4 squares from 8 to 18 years old. So I appreciate everything you were saying. You were talking about some things, and it was bringing back such great memories of my first decade of calling, and I so appreciate what you guys do so much. And that's
Thank
all.
you. Anybody have questions at all? One of the experiences I remember is in a high school, the second period of the day, all boys came in. This is high school. And they got squared up, and they knew who the boy was, they knew who the girl was, and it was one of the best classes of the day. It was amazing. This was like sophomores in high school.
I have a question about the demographics, I guess. I've done a couple of times. I've done some events in the schools, and they had several different grades would come in, all boys and girls, and like a zillion of them would come into the gym, and we'd do a thing. But what I mainly remember from when I was in school is that all the PE classes were segregated. So there was the boys' PE class, the girls' PE class, and nary the twain shall meet. And so I was wondering if you could say something about that. And then the other thing is a modern issue that I don't know exactly what the issues might be, but it seems like there might be some. Is that now there's a big deal with students picking their own gender, or being very offended that you would say that someone is a boy or a girl. Maybe you're not even allowed to say those words anymore. But there's a lot of political stuff going on in the schools now with that. And anyway, so just on the subject of the gender separation and sort of the modern political issues, if you could say anything about those.
I guess I never ran into that.
Quickly, just somebody's got their radio or something on in the background, and it'd be nice if you could mute while this was happening. Good questions. I got a couple of hands up, but those great questions.
I never
Chris, take over, Mike.
Yeah, Chris, I don't ever remember running into that at all. Maybe nowadays it's different. Again, sometimes boys would dance with boys, girls would dance with girls, and that's okay. I mean, nobody said anything. Hey, you're in the girl's spot, you're in the boy's spot, that type of thing. There was just no gender thing whatsoever. Now, again, maybe it's changed. I don't know. But yeah, I never ran into it myself.
Yeah, likewise with me. I didn't really run into that problem. However, when I did start square dancing, it was back in the 50s, and I don't know if it was grade 7 or grade 8. The boys had little green shorts, and we were either shirts or skins. Either you had a t-shirt or you didn't. And the wall was up. The girls were on the other side of the wall, and they were wearing the silly little bloomers that they wore in the days. And one day we went to gym, and that wall receded. And of course, we were scared to death. There's all those girls over there. We didn't know what was going on. And then they decided they were going to teach us square dancing. And they had that old record player going. We could not understand the caller. We were supposed to touch hands with a girl. And of course, we're skinny little things. We're, embarrassed. And it just was awful. I was never going to square dance ever, no matter what. However, now one of the schools I did do was a junior high, and the teacher was apparently very good at teaching, boys and girls together. And she used some old style square dance stuff. So, but I came in and I did the modern type stuff. And at one point, one of the boys came up to me and said, "Can we do? Our teacher has on a record our favorite dance." called Thunder and Lightning. Well, Thunder and Blazes, they did. I said, sure. So the teacher put the record on, and all of a sudden, the boys all got in one square, and the girls all got in their squares, and they did this Thunder and Lightning, where the boy person, if you want to call it that, the boy person, they linked arms, and the girl persons, they hung on between the arms, and their feet went out because they circled so fast. The girls they were parallel to the floor. It was amazing. I did not use that material myself, but somebody did, and it worked well. So
I want
you
to
can
answer
learn things.
I want to answer Chris's question that he asked. I forgot about. Most of the schools in the area, a lot of them do have separate classes for boys and girls, but when they do their square dance unit, they come together, and it's just been done that way.
I've got to throw in a quick anecdote. Before I got into square dancing, one of my almost introductions to square dancing was in junior high school, where, like Joe said, we had the boys' gym and the girls' gym and a big partition between the two of them. And we in the boys' gym were told that if we got caught peeking through the crack at the girls, if we got caught peeking at the girls, they would open the doors and make us square dance with them. So square dancing was a threat back then. Fortunately, I got over that. Tony, you've had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, thanks, Don. Great presentation, guys. You touched on just about everything that I could imagine was relevant. I have 3 comments. I don't know if you want them all at once. Actually, one of them is a suggestion of an additional market, and the other comments are just where to find resources if you're looking for material. The additional market that some of you may not have thought of in connection with working with kids is homeschoolers. I've had a lot of luck with homeschooling groups. They tend to be either very liberal or very conservative, and I found that there's no real difference in what they enjoy. The conservative ones are sometimes from Baptist churches, which 50 years ago they might not have allowed any kind of dancing, and now they don't want the kids to do rock dancing, but they have no problem with square dancing. Where do you find these groups? Well, I did a web search just now for homeschooling groups in Massachusetts, which is my state, and you can do the same thing with your state or province. And there are a dozen or 2 dozen support groups in Massachusetts alone of groups of parents who all homeschool and all live in pretty much the same area, and they. It's not just for their networking with each other. They provide resources, field trips, and things that one family wouldn't be able to do on their own. So this is a good place to knock on the door and say, I have something that I think your group would enjoy, but it would take all of your families cooperating in order for it to work.
Tony, question: where do they find a venue to do that?
Well, if it's a church group, then one of the churches, there's one that and this is most of my experience has been with one-offs, with one night parties, but I don't see why you couldn't sell an ongoing class with one of these groups. So my most of my homeschool experience has been with church groups, and so they will meet in the parish hall of one of their churches. But there, if it's a secular group, somebody may have an inn at either a school or a community center. But it's I would put it on them to find the venue. And most of the groups that I've worked with through the years, any kind of group, have provided their own venue. Occasionally somebody will ask us for help in finding one, but almost always they're willing to do that part of it.
Hey, Tony.
Yes.
And Don and Joe, I have another event I got to get to right now, but I really appreciate you guys coming to the session today, and I hope we got a lot out of it. So thanks a lot.
Mike, thanks. Yeah, thanks an awful lot.
Thanks,
Go,
Mike.
Okay,
go do your other thing and watch the video later and see the good
I will.
conversation that you've stirred up in us. Thank you very much for doing this program.
You guys have a
As
good
someone
day.
in the homeschool realm, I want to add to that homeschooling thing is that most homeschooling groups have a spot or a place that they have co-op groups with where they do some schooling together. They can always meet at a park. They usually have some facility in which they use that they already have access to.
Good to know.
Yeah. Yeah, and they usually get together, you know, in geographical areas, and you know, so you get more than just a few kids, which is good. And while Mike is gone, by the way, I do have some stories about Mike and myself.
He's going to be
Mike,
listening to the video later.
that's right. Mike is probably one of the most laid-back callers in the world. Okay. I used to run a square dance campground in New York called Rockies Recreation Area, Potato Hill. And I had Mike come up one time. He stayed with me, him and his wife, when they were both slender like toothpicks, which was good because all we had in our guest bedroom was a single bed. However, Mike would stand on our little raised platform stage and call, and his one foot would just go up and down and up and down and up and down. I tried holding that foot down, the other foot would go. We eventually tried to nail his shoes to the floor to stop him from doing that. The kids got together in the groups and they decided they would have sound effects come through the speaker on him. They had we had weight and wheel lights. They put up a shoebox full of tissue paper, and at one point they pulled the fishing line, and all this stuff in front of him came down like snow. He kept calling, not a change at all. They recorded different sounds throughout the campground, and the one that got him finally to break a smile and change from being the caller was he called an 8-chain through, and on the tape recording was the sound of a toilet flushing, and that finally got him going. But so anyhow, there's you know, it's always fun to work with guys like Mike.
Tony, why don't you hold off on the additional resources, but don't forget it, because Bill's had his hand up for a long time. Then Clark.
Oh, he didn't take his hand down.
Oh, isn't your hand? You're muted with your hand.
I put it down, but then I put it back up. I just had a question. Something that you was gonna do. How did you have any kind of little tricks up your sleeve when you have the inevitable boys? No, I gotta hold hands with the girls. I saw so many different methods. I've heard there was the pinky. They would do their pinkies. And then there was the one they were wearing a sweatshirt. They would roll that sweatshirt up over the hand, so it was and and then I told them what used to get them when they said, "Well, you're not going to get cooties," and they looked at me like, "How does that guy know about cooties?" Hey, I was your age once. I just wonder if you had any kind of tricks up your sleeve. I know a caller, Deborah Carol Jones, told me one time that when she used to bring along with her, she was doing a party for school, that she would bring along with her equipment. She'd bring along a box of those plastic or latex disposable gloves. Cured the problem right there. But I just wondered, Joe, did you have any little things, or did you just deal with it?
But before answering, Joe, Mark Hart had to leave early, and he messaged me to ask you, and it's probably going to be the same answer. How do you get your young ones like 4th grade and lower to get over cooties? So I'm sure I put in his question for him. You can answer both at the same time. I love the latex gloves though.
Yeah, that's nowadays that might be the first of the day. Here's your mask, here's your gloves. You have one of those body suits.
Hazmat suits.
Yeah, No, I didn't really have usually any problem with that. Usually it wasn't until grade 7 and 8 that you get to where some of the girls wouldn't want to touch certain boys, and they'd do the sleeves down, which is to me was very rude and almost verges on the bully aspect. I would, in my pre-material to the teachers, I would cover this about, it's up to them to teach them the proper etiquette of being civil to each other and being nice people. And I, you know, I mean, there's a very few, small percentage, maybe a 1%, if that much, of the kids who still would kind of resist. But the other kids, peer pressure is great because the other kids would say, "Come on, you have to hold on, or you won't get the effect of circling left, or when you do a right and left through, you do have to pull by, you have to touch to courtesy turn." Um, uh, and if you see that kind of a problem happening, you can't really single them out or anything. You kind of have to go with it. So no tricks. I just would hope that and I would say something too. I would say, no, your teacher probably has told you about, being nice to each other, and not everybody is your best friend, but this is teamwork. This is really important, and it's teamwork, just like a basketball team, a baseball team, whatever. And we're working this together, and the way to do it is we have to touch hands once in a while, and that's fine. Nothing wrong with that at all. I did it when I was a kid, and look I got older, a lot older. So there you go.
Clark?
On the cooties thing, at some meeting, someone said the way they do it is you hold your hands up and the cooties go down. So that's how you avoid it. I had a couple of comments. I'll hit them rapid fire. One, first off, obviously you guys covered all the right stuff, and you have way more experience doing this and interest in it than I do. When I've done it at one place, it's been an artist in residence is what I was paid under, and how the school thought about doing square dancing. I've never done any all-day gigs. It's always just been usually one class or two classes in a row. So the stamina and how long you're there for has always for me been shorter. I've never been given control of a class. There's always been a teacher there. And because of that, I've never been Corey checked. That's the criminal offender record information, or police check or background check. I've never had a need for that. So that hasn't been a problem. I've never been asked for credentials. I am a Color Lab certified teacher of square dancing, which was a program like the Color Coach program, but for people who need to go into schools and teach square dancing. I've never been asked for that and never had it been of any use to me, but it is a program that Color Lab has, and it was formed to help people be able to go and call in schools. The teachers, especially at a place I've been going back to for 14 years, prep their class beforehand. The teacher knows what the product is, and they're enthused about it, and they want to get their kids enthused. So I never have any problems. That happens to be a grade 7. I'm very into alternative music. And initially in the schools, I started doing the alternative music, but I discovered that I end up liking my more traditional square dance music, and I typically stick with that more. So I was sweating over the music aspect, and now I've learned not to really sweat that as much. And I do what I'm comfortable with and what seems to work for me. I think both of you have so much experience and have done it for so long that you forget the wide range of skills that are needed to cover the wide range of ages you may encounter. And I know that I couldn't go in and handle kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth grade. I have gone in and done a bad job with like third and fourth grades a couple of times. But sixth on up, I'm okay with. But there's a huge difference in presenting dancing and music, et cetera, at the lower age ranges. Almost all of my gigs are one-off, but there is one that's progressive where I see the same people 7 or 8 times in a row, and you need to do something different with that. And you have to know beforehand, is this progressive or not? One of the problems that I've discovered in teaching, and this more relates to teaching than anything else, is occasionally I'll have a square and there'll be a teacher in the room and there'll be someone having a problem in the square, and the teacher will stand outside the square, and if it's circle left, she'll be kind of pointing, go left, go right, and do this, and she'll be imitating and helping and trying to do all the teacher things that teachers have been taught to assist kids. And the more that teacher does that, the worse that square does, partly because they're distracted by the teacher and they're not listening to the caller, and partly because I think the kids are experienced learned helplessness, where the less they do, the more the teacher tries to help, so the less they need to do, so they never have to learn it and do it on themselves. And then finally, the worst thing that I've had to teach, and this caught me by surprise, is we were preparing for a May Day dance, and the teachers have to do a dance at May Day. And I had a particular dance that I thought they would do good at and enjoy. And we'd done it with the kids, and the grade heads at the 7th graders, they knew that this was a good dance, and they got the rest of the teachers sold, hey, let Clark come in and teach us this dance, and we'll do this for our teacher dance. So we all got together in a room, and I had, 30 minutes of their attention to teach them this dance. Teaching teachers is the hardest thing in the world. They don't listen, they don't pay attention, they all think they know it. They're each helping the other when the one behind or ahead of them isn't getting it. And it was kind of a disaster. And it really caught me by surprise. So I'll stop talking.
Clark, your one comment about teachers helping, well, teachers that help but don't, reminds me of adult clubs when you bring in angels to classes. I'd rather teach, go enjoy the rest of your birthday, Daryl.
Yes.
I'd rather teach a class without angels, I think, where, as you say, the main thing, and I think Joe mentioned this too, the main thing you're doing for quite a while is teaching people to listen to you, to focus on what you're saying and nobody else. I don't see any hands up right now, but Doc, I know you've called a lot in schools in Japan, and I'm just curious if you'd be willing to talk about the differences over there compared to here.
Well, just a little. Maybe in my case, I concentrated onto just one city. Okay, they had 6 middle schools, but out of 6, 3 schools accepted me to do a gym class, and always the man who enjoyed the best is me. Yeah, and really, every time full of the student pupil in a gym, 10, 12 square sets. That what I teach, and where I teach, and teachers and the principal liked it because you know what, the school teachers and principal likes best 1 point. The age of 13 to 14 years old is what the adolescents feel. Adolescents, and so they don't mix very well. But once we give the gym class, they are all free to talk to each other, and girl to boy, boy to girl, and a very nice atmosphere. So that Well, that gives me a, makes me happy. That's it. That's all. No difference.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Any other?
I think Mel had something there, did
Mel's sitting there quietly.
he?
Mel had his hand up and Chris has his hand up.
You
Oh,
sound surprised there, Don.
I didn't want that part to come through. Chris, I see your hand. Thanks to Clark, I see your hand is up. Chris, go for it.
I was just going to throw in something about those background checks. When I've gone in to elementary schools and done one of things, I'm just there for a day, and I'm, just doing something for a couple hours with them. I didn't have to do any background check thing or anything. I did have to do that Corey check when I went into one of the universities. And those aren't even kids really, right? They're adults. Although the reason is that there could be underage freshmen in there, and so that was part of that. And the other thing about that was that was a situation where they were going to leave me alone with them, as opposed to the one of thing at the elementary school, and there's teachers in the in the gym there with you. But and the Corey check, I seem to remember there was a lead time on it. So that was the only thing that was annoying about it. Other than that, it was no big deal.
Joe, I have a question that I thought of while you and Mike were talking, but I didn't think to write down. I've had quite a bit of experience calling to one college club that I started because I was sort of part of the group with the outing club that started, etc. And stayed with them and were off and on for quite a while. But I'm wondering, Michael's going to join us, or Mickey. Hold on just a second. Where's the cursor? There we go. We have Germany represented now too. I was wondering if the age of the caller being closer to the age of the kids, or as some of us are now, further from the age of the kids, and you saw the transition as did Mike through the years, if that makes any kind of a difference or not.
Yeah, I think it can. Well, we gotta
Mickey,
mute
I've
your
got some
microphone.
background noise coming from you. Can you mute?
Mickey.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I think that, like when I started, of course, I was a young teacher at the time. And of course, when I started, I was a teacher in the school, so I was accepted as a teacher that way. And I was not one of the disciplinarian type teachers, having teaching the music program. Kids came to me because they wanted to, except for the general music classes. Of course, they had to come in and all, but I treated them the same way as I treated all the other kids. It was I enjoy it. I know you'll enjoy it, and they would reciprocate with the same attitude. However, when I went into other schools, where I was not known other than I was just some stranger, I was still younger at the time. Now, as I got older, I didn't pay any attention to that myself, thinking, well, I'm older and whatever. I treated them more like my own kids, and which was very laissez-faire, hands off. I wasn't the disciplinarian. I'm here to give you fun. That's, and I let them know, and when we, like for Grand Square, if I taught Grand Square, I said, this has got to be the greatest call ever. And I'd lay it on thick. Now that I'm the age I am, which is undisclosed, I'm the grandfather image, so the younger ones can accept me. The the middle school type kids, they tolerate me, and the high schoolers accept me. It's like the middle school is about the worst in terms of getting things done. It depends on the teacher, though. If the teacher has got good control of the kids and respected, you'll have a great time. I think I've only had one school where I had a problem. It was French immersion school up here in Canada, and the kids were just, they were rude, crude, and everything else. But the teachers also were not respected by the kids, and that made a big difference. I am surprised at Clark saying that he didn't know how we did it with the younger group, because I remember when my youngest daughter was about 7, Clark was probably the best babysitter we ever had. Uh, during some of the breaks when he wasn't dancing or calling, he would sit and talk to Megan, and she loved him. He introduced her to one of her favorite books, The Phantom Toll Booth, I think it was called. And like, I don't know how Clark ever knew about that one. But you know, I think if you had used the same approach that you used with her, you would have done fine in the lower grades. You know, but it's got to be what you're interested in, what you like to do. And like he said, he finally realized, use what is comfortable for him. You got to be comfortable, or the kids aren't going to be. So, you know, you just have to go in thinking it's fun. Not everybody loves it. Not everybody's going to want it. But you know what? For those who do, you're going to have a great time. And, you know, we did put up, I think the biggest thing that I can say is have patience. You know, if you need to, take some Valium or drink a lot, I don't know what, but do something to get yourself relaxed. So that you really don't take anything personally. These kids don't know you. If they say something that's offensive, they don't know you. So it's really not personal. So have the patience, but you know, and then have some sort of a plan. Think about what you're going to do or what you might do. The more you do it, the better you get. Now, on this book, you know, square dancing for kids of all ages, I have used it with seniors and whatnot as well. It's going to take me a little bit of time to get it resurrected because having moved several, more than a couple of dozen times, not everything is all in the same place. So I will clean it up and get it out to those that were interested in it.
Frequently, what we do, if you have it digitized, is get sent to Dan, and I can forward it to him if you want. And
Okay.
Dan's pretty good at putting it up online and making it available to everybody.
Okay, that'd be good. Yeah, I wanted to make it into a PDF. I wasn't able to scan it. Well, I guess I can scan it in and change it to PDF.
One of the things that totally off the subject, but I should have announced at the beginning and on the hour, was that next week, being a 3-day weekend, holiday weekend in the United States, as typically is the case, we will not be having a session next Saturday, but the week after we will. Sorry to break that up. Nell, you had your hand up. Still do.
Yeah, great presentation, guys. Loved it. Loved it. I did a lot of work in schools when I was in Canada, and Joe, I think probably crossed over some of the schools that you did before in Ontario as well. One of the things that I found, there's a big split. There's really 2 ways that you go into the schools, and one is to take over a part of the curriculum, and it's usually about a week in the curriculum, which is part of the phys ed class that they have, and that's usually at the elementary school or the middle school level. Now in high schools, they have semesters where dance is part of it, and if you're lucky enough to have dancing as part of the semester's class for the high school, you can take over the entire class for that, and they'll ask you in for that once you've established your credibility. You said something there. I found that if I had a progressive program, I used to go in every year for the elementary school, the middle school, the high school, and whatnot. And when I got to the middle school in particular, when you start going grade by grade by grade, there's a different curriculum and a different program for each one. Each one is a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. They all do the same thing. They all learn them at the same time, but it sets the template that last year we learned this year we're going to learn something new. And they see the older kids doing it, it's suddenly cool to them as opposed to it's mine. And I found that really worked well, but I also had the advantage I was being asked to come back every quarter of the school to do that for a week in the schools. So that was good. You said something about the teachers in there. Absolutely correct. I always like to have a discussion with the teachers beforehand, preferably in the teacher's lounge, so that they know what I do. And the first thing is, in my class, I don't, you can participate as a dancer, or you can stay off to the side and not saying it's my class, don't participate, please, I don't want you on the floor correcting a student, et cetera, et cetera. And they're very good at it. And I also say a lot of the times, if I do have a problem child, I'll actually say to the teacher rather than the child, excuse me, this is a participation activity. Everybody participates. So if you're going to stand there and make noise on the side, I'm saying this to the teacher, I wish you wouldn't, otherwise come and join the square because everybody dances. And it just, we have this all prearranged beforehand. It's all diplomatically done. The teacher gets out on the floor, she'll dance or she'll stay on the sideline, but she does not coach from the sidelines or stand behind the square and deal with the student unless it's a teacher's aide, say a child with autism or something like that that's participating. That's the only time they're on the floor. I also found that you have to you have to treat the students differently depending on where they are. And I found it at pre-high school, which is grade 7 or 8, depending on where you are in Canada, but grade 8 and above, I don't treat them like kids. I treat them like young adults. My name is Mel. It's not Mr. Wilkerson, it's Mel at that age, at the elementary school. And suddenly there's a different bond between you. You're separate from the teachers, but you're there to give them a good time. And if you present well, you get a good time. They come to you year after year. And that's a big, big important thing. And it's also a big mistake that I found a lot of callers do when they go to the high schools is they treat the kids like kids. They baby talk them, they talk down to them, even at elementary school or at the lower grades. Past grade 3, kids don't want to be talked to like little tiny, I don't know this. They want to be treated with respect. You can still treat them like kids, but treat them with respect. If you talk down to them like babies, you've lost your card. The last thing I had was the music. I don't go with the old music. I don't go with things like Solomon Levy. I don't do line dances. I don't do things. I do a lot of circle mixers. I like the square dances in the circle, the Sicilian, that kind of stuff to work with the kids. But I use the music that I use for the adult classes because I'm there to teach square dancing. I'm not there to teach an 80-year-old round dance or an 80-year-old circle dance or a 20-year-old line dance. I'm there to teach square dancing. And that's what I do. And I found that was also very, very successful, but you got to be able to carry it. Those are all the comments that I had there, Joe. Excellent. Both you and Mike, excellent presentation. The one thing I just wanted to point out was you find your way that is successful for you when you teach these classes, because Mike does it very differently than you do, but you do achieve the same thing. I do it differently than both. I know, Doc, you probably have a very, very different program. You have a really good, solid a base of students when you go into the school, but they're trained to listen. We don't have that advantage. So find what works. It's just like calling for a group. Find what works and go for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Slightly. Go ahead.
I'd like to touch on something on what Mel was saying about method, how you use things. My method was that I use now even with adults when I do like fun nights and whatnot is very much a one couple thing at a time. I had a 5th grade group of about 20 or 30 squares, and they all wanted to talk and clap and everything else. I finally decided I was going to talk to just one couple at a time. So I would have couple 1 stand back to back, separate and go around the outside of the circle, walk forward, pass each other to the other, come back home, do-sa-do. Couple 2, do that. And it was, there is an old square dance called, I think it's called Split 6, something like that. And what it is couple 1 would go across the square and go between couple 3. So they're cutting, it's cut off 6. So they're cutting off 6 people, and then they separate, come back home. Couple 2, the same thing. And eventually you can do couple 1 and 3, stand back to back, separate around the outside track. Couple 2 and 4, into the middle, circle left, full circle, back out, all join hands, circle left. So mine is a really, really basic approach, but it works. And I'm able to use, my shtick kind of a thing, even to the point of when you do an element left. I have them face a corner, shake left hands. No, the other left hand. You go through that routine, and then you say, okay, now walk the fingers up to the elbow. With the adults, you can get a little more, more PG-13 and say, no, you have to stop at the elbow. Okay. So now you have an arm turn, and very easily and gently you can introduce the difference between. There's only 2 ways to touch a person: hand holds, arm holds. That's it. And this is an arm hold. Turn the corner all the way around, let her go, face your partner, do-sa-do. Just very, very simple things. Face your partner, do-sa-do, face your corner, do-sa-do. You have to be careful with your words. You don't want to get mixed up and confuse them and everything. But like Mel said, find your method. If that works for you, great. Whatever works. Some people use the Sicilian circle to great effect. My whole take on this, even with the adults, is get them moving. Talk little and almost talk what they're doing. Circle left, circle right. Everybody circle right. Go single file, drop hands. You have to tell them to drop hands. Go single file. Okay, just the girls, turn around, face your partner. Here's your do-sa-do. And then finally you get into promenades. You can scatter promenade, find another couple, 2 couples, circle left, circle right, circle left. Put your right hand in the middle, make a right hand star. They don't know what a star is, but they know put the right hand in, and they're starring. You never had to teach that. Reverse, go the other way. Use your left hand star. One thing will follow the other, but get them moving and dancing. Then they're so busy, they aren't going to cause you a problem. Okay.
Yeah. You reminded me of one last thing that I jotted down here. It was a comment that was made about boys and girls and larks and ravens and blues and greens and, toads and frogs or whatever you want to use. I tried that once. I will never, ever do that again. I have called for gay groups. I've called for social dance groups. I've called in schools where they've had gay students and non-gay students and 15 different genders of students or whatever the number is at these days. I decided to go, we're going to do, the left hand dancer, right hand dancer, put the ribbon on. No, never going to do it again. I said, boys are on the left. If you're going to dance as a boy, you dance on the left side. Girls are on the right. If you're going to dance as a girl, dance as a girl. Girls are on the right side. Choose whatever you want, but I ask you just stay that way for the whole session. So if you're going to dance as a boy, be a boy, dance as a girl, be a girl, because that's how I'll refer to you. The first time I tried, and I can't remember if it was larks or ravens or whatever I used, the people that took the biggest offense to it were the kids. It's the students. When I tried it at a gay club, I asked, and I was told, look, we dance, who's ever dancing, the boy dances on the left, whoever dances a girl dances on the right. We don't really care, but that's how you call. You don't change it for regular dances. Why are you changing it for us? And that was the greatest advice I ever was given. I don't change it. And you know what? Nobody has taken offense to it because it's very clear. If you dance on the left, you're going to dance the boys' part. If you dance on the right, you're going to dance the girls' part. I keep it that way. I also really appreciated what you said about don't try and sight call in the schools. Keep your routines, unless you're actually teaching a curriculum, which I was lucky enough to do it for I had the whole season. Unless you're lucky enough to have an entire curriculum, don't sight call. It's not worth it.
I switched from boys and girls to men and women, especially for adult clubs, and I'm switching back now because I use Taminations, and Taminations doesn't understand men and women as frequently. It does in some cases. And I've learned that that's the label. Boys is the label for the left-hand dancer, and girls is the label for the right-hand dancer, and it has nothing to do with being politically correct or anything. I wanted to throw in parallel slight thing. I don't know, but at MIT there was and still is the Square Dance Club, Tech Squares, and one of the things that they managed to do as a club after I left there was they approached the phys ed department, and I don't know if Clark will be able to fill us in more if they still do it, but they get credit for a phys ed semester by taking the square dance class, and that, and as a result, they end up keeping some of them. Some just thought that was an easy way to get through phys ed, but it really has bolstered the size of their classes. I thought it was a great idea. Clark, do they still do that?
I believe they're still doing it. And it's weird because phys ed runs by quarters, not semesters. So I think we get people for a quarter, and I don't know if they get credit for the next quarter. So in one quarter, I think Ted's trying to get through SSD now, and then they learn plus effectively the next quarter and graduate. But they only get credit for one quarter, I think.
Oh, Tony, your hand's up. Sorry. Didn't miss that.
I just wanted to throw in the resources that I was thinking about now that half of us have left, before the rest of us leave.
Sorry, I forgot about that.
It's all right. I'll just briefly mention them, and then I'll put them all in the chat. One of them is somebody at the very beginning mentioned Dick Ledger, and that he was a master at good, easy material, only using a handful of basics. And I'm a huge Dick Ledger fan. He's influenced my style and my repertoire a lot. I believe that his recordings on the Grand label and their top sub-label are all out of print now. I just want to mention that he made 4 LPs for the Kimbo educational label, which are still in print. A 3-volume graduated series, and then I think it was called, the 4th album was called Square Dancing the American Way, which was singing squares to songs that were well known at the time, which was like 40 years ago. And I would highly recommend all 4 of them, all 4 of those albums. If you don't think your group will appreciate the songs, then we all know how to take a figure and set it to a different song. So you can use some of those figures if making up your own really easy figures is not one of your superpowers. You can take some of his and put them to your favorite singing call music. And then the other note on resources, I have several friends in the traditional network who are experts at easy material, things that are appropriate for kids at different age groups. And most of these friends specialize in school residencies. They make most of their income from going into a school for a week or 2 weeks, teaching them, and then probably having a family dance at the end of the residency. So I will put their websites in the chats, but these are full of real gems, things that I would encourage everybody to look at. The music, by and large, is traditional, but it's not real hokey. And within each album, it tends to range from the low key to the more high energy. There's a little bit of everything. These are letter-sized books that lie flat, and they have companion CDs, and most of them are now also available as downloads. So I'll put the websites in the chat.
Thank you. That's good.
I think one other thing to mention is at the lower grades, like kindergarten through grade 3, it's a whole different idea when you go in for the from the educational aspect, they're interested in the rhythm and movement, big body type movement things. And one of the things to promote is that this big body movement type of a thing is very, very basic. Walk, 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 walk. These are, if you want to relate it to music, it's quarter notes, that kind of a thing. And it's shuffling. It's not jumping up and down sort of a thing. But you can go in usually to any state educational website and look up the syllabus for, say, kindergarten, first, second, third grade, and find out what motor skills that are used and emphasized in both the phys ed and the music classes, because it's a big part of their education, for kindergartners, first graders, to, not just walking, but they do crawling, they do skipping, all these things. You can incorporate that kind of a thing. It makes your job relatively easy, but you're still doing your job and you're relating it to their curriculum. It's almost like part of team teaching. Like, you can ask the teachers, what are the requirements for your, when you're teaching, what do you teach them to do? And like Mike said, the hokey pokey, that kind of a thing is excellent. Hands, shoulders, knees, toes, whatever that one was, I forget it now. All of those things. So you check out the syllabus and see what it says is supposed to be covered, and then see if you can relate it to square dancing.
Joe, when you started calling, you were a music teacher. Were there any skills from that you transferred over to calling?
Well, yeah, knowledge of the rhythms, of course. The difference between say a jig and a 6/8 pattern and a 4/4 pattern. A straight 4 pattern, your feet go up, down, or down, up, down, up, down, up. So it's like marching. A 6/8 is much stronger. And once the kids can do a particular figure, if you put on a piece that's got a 6/8 rhythm background, they will dance fantastically, because the foot goes down, then it comes up for 2 of the sub beats. So it's a much stronger downbeat. Down, up, or well, it's down for 2 beats. So it's very strong downbeat. Down, up, down, instead of the up, down, up, down. You can go anywhere, up, down. Along with that, when you're dealing with the kid, dealing with any age level, is the idea that when you're square dancing or doing any kind of dancing, your feet should be moving all the time, even if you're not doing the action. Okay, suppose you say heads promenade halfway. Yes, the sides move in, but when they back out, are their feet still going? They should be. It's just like football or tennis. Watch those players. Their feet are always going, so they can go any which direction. So I sort of resent people that say do-sa-do is stupid. No, it's called dancing. Yes, you're going forward, backing up. When you grand square, there's a lot of backing up, but you're dancing. So I want them to move to the left, to the right, forward, or back at any one point. If their feet are already moving, they can do that. And this can be approached with a fun idea. The idea of boys and girls. I tell the kids, look, I use the term boys and girls. You know why? It's because the adults feel really good when I call a guy a boy, because he feels much younger. And the girls, the women, they feel much better if I call them girls, because they feel younger. And they kind of chuckle about that. They think, oh yeah, my mom and dad, he's a boy, she's a girl. So anyhow, other than that, voice-wise, there are certain things with the voice. I did mention, don't use cold water. I know it feels really good, but it kills the blood vessels around your whole throat, and that constricts the muscle, and you don't want to constrict the muscle. The other thing too is, any of these activities, they produce a natural high, the endorphins in the body, and it's why we hook the adults, because it's like taking a drug. they get high, they feel good, they come back. That's what we want. Many times I would teach school all day. I'd get in the car and I'd drive 2 hours or so down the New York coast to maybe, the Catskills or something, and call a dance. Have a migraine headache, be hungry, but the first minute into calling, it all disappears. It's just like with the dancers, they can come with all their problems, and within that first minute, hopefully, all that stuff goes away. So same thing with the kids. Some of the kids that are the most incorrigible, if you treat them fairly and decently, they become the normal kid that they are. They have a lot of self-worth when they can do these calls, and they can do them better than the smarties. So,
Joe, I can't remember quite how you put it, but when you mentioned each call, emphasize each call or what have you, and I teach showmanship, what I tell people is every call is important. Don't apologize for only doing a do-si-do to let people catch up. Don't apologize for doing a forward and back. Each call is an exciting call if you make it that way. And if you want to get examples of somebody to follow, listen to any of Dick Ledger's recordings, or if you can find him on YouTube. Dick was a master at, and do a right and left through, and do it, just every call is important. Go for it that way. Tony, I was wondering when.
I'm here.
Yeah, I know, but I think I'm getting an echo on myself. Tony, when you do a party night or one-ofs kind of thing, do you do squares? Do you do traditional or closer to modern squares? Do you do contras?
Okay, one-nighters, I never do true contras, where every other couple is active, because they take too long to explain the setup and the progression and the changing roles or changing sides at the end. I do a lot of whole set long ways, like the Virginia reel, and there are a lot of those. Most of them are easier than the Virginia reel, and those are in the books and recordings that I put in the chat. I like, I use four couple squares when I can get away with it, when the numbers work out, when there are enough people and a big enough group that a very small percentage will be left out. But I don't always, I use them, as I say, when the numbers work out, and if I can't use them, I try not to feel bad about it. Most jobs, I alternate circle mixers with long ways, back and forth through the evening. When I do squares, some of them are what you would think of as traditional, with unique figures that only occur in that dance, like Bird in the Cage or Duck for the Oyster. And some of them are the sort of thing that Dick Ledger might use, where they're all made up of interchangeable basics, because I love them all.
Clark?
One note that I wrote down that I use, especially when I'm being hired for a one-time party dance, but also for calling in the schools, is maybe not asked as bluntly, but why do you think this is a good idea? In other words, why do you, the person who's contacted me, think it's a good idea for me to come in and try to teach square dancing to your third grade, your seventh grade, or, to your college group or whatever? And partly, I learned their conception or misconception as of what they remember square dancing to be, why they remember having had a good time way back when, and want to bring that forward or show it to people or whatever. And as long as they've put some thought into why they think this is going to work out and be good, I'm happy. But I do like to kind of set that expectation and make sure we're in agreement with what's happening and why it's a good thing.
It's a good point.
Mhm. Very good
A
idea.
lot of the times in school curriculums, square dancing is a tick box. It's just one of the options that can get ticked off. Let's see if we can find somebody. And I found myself in that position once with a high school. It actually worked out quite well, but I got caught in, it was a curriculum teach as part of a dance course. They didn't have square dancing. So I come in, I got 2 weeks with the students, and that was part of the dance training. The other side was, it was a tick box, but as part of that curriculum, I was expected to grade the students after the fact. And that's something you have to be careful of if you're going into a school. If it's a part of a curriculum, a graded curriculum, to make sure that they know it's either a pass or fail. And don't be hesitant to fail somebody.
That means they have to take it over and you get another student.
It means they don't pass that part of the curriculum. But if they know it's a pass or fail right from the onset, it's a participation activity. My job is to get them past the fact that I'm doing this to get grades. And as you know, you were saying, once that first minute of the needle's down and they're moving, all that disappears. Once they're having fun, all that disappears. But if they know right from the onset that this is a pass or fail, if you're in one of those curriculum setups, most of your troubles are over. It's an easy class. It's like learning how to ballroom dance or learning how to do fencing. It's a pass or fail. You either do it, you don't. To pass that part, you've got to pass each part depending on what your grade is at the end. So, but don't be afraid to fail somebody. If just like adult classes, you're going to have, sometimes kids are just jerks, and sometimes adults, you'll get that one dancer that's just a jerk. It'll happen.
Do they get to vote whether you pass or fail?
I hope so. Usually, if you fail, they don't ask you back. And like I said, so far I've been lucky on those ones, at least when I was doing it.
Well, that probably covers pretty much everything there. I think just about everything you can think about until you get behind the mic and there's a bunch of kids in front of you and you go like, oh my God, why did I think about this? I'd rather get in the food line.
Joe, I did one, well, I guess K through 6 or something like that. And I wasn't prepared at all, but I was able to make up a lot, all along the way. Because, I'd get groups of 8, almost squares, circling, but some would be 5 and some would be 7, and be teachers mixed in, and I'd have, teacher and a kid on either hand going forward and back, and had some words to make them understand what they were doing. Yeah, you've got to be flexible. They didn't ask me back.
No.
Joe, have you ever faced the issue where this happened to me in one of the high schools? I was brought in to do a dance at the end of the classes where the teachers had taught them how to square dance according to the school curriculum.
Mhm.
And then you go in and they've spent, well, at this point, 13 weeks of square dance lessons for square dancing in school, which is about your first 8 minutes of teaching on a one-night stand, but they've been doing it for 13 weeks to learn that. And this is what they know. And it's always a problem if you're ever in that kind of situation. I'm just wondering if you faced. I faced that once, and I took what they knew, went over it very quickly, and then I progressed them because I had like 4 sessions of about 2 hours a session, which was great for school because that's just the way the classes were structured. So they put them all together. And I'm just wondering, have you ever faced that? Here's what we've learned. We've learned how to square dance. We're bringing in a professional caller now. Now you're going to dance them. And what they've learned is not what you teach at all.
Yeah. I've had that, but like now if they've been doing traditional squares, then I'm in trouble because I'm not a traditional square dance caller. I really don't know any of it. I know what I like. There's a few of them that I really enjoy dancing, but I've never worked at learning, memorizing the routines and knowing how to instruct people to do them. And sometimes that's what they've done. They've done it to records. For the most part, if I've been able to get into their system to start with, yes, they will do. I'll give them the list or my book. Give them the list of calls that they might teach, and if they've got my material, they'll use that, and then it's great because I come in, and of course I'm putting it together so they can really dance it, as opposed to the teacher having walked them through things, so to speak. But if they've learned a whole lot of things differently, I just go with it, and like you said, I'll cover what I can of what they've done, and then say, now here's a few more things. This is like frosting on the cake, and go from there. That's about the best you can do. One other aspect of going into the schools, whether it's the high schools or the universities, is let people know that you're a square dance expert and can choreograph square dancing for their musicals. Sometimes they do these hokey things in the musical, like if they're doing Oklahoma, they don't have to do, something that they think is, like the old Bugs Bunny routine, do-sa-do and throw them off the cliff and, grab an alligator and kick them in the toe. That doesn't fit, but you can come in and choreograph very, very simple routines. Remember, circles, stars, ladies' chains, those are great things. If they're really willing to practice a grand square, it'll sell the musical, and they're fun to do. And you usually get free tickets to the musical. So,
And depending on who you're doing it for, it also pays very well.
well, absolutely. I've done double duty because I've played in a lot of pit bands. So I play. Well, I don't now because I've changed my geographical location, so nobody knows me here. But back in Ontario and back in New York, I played in a lot of different musicals, professional level and high school and college and whatnot. So I've been able to play in there, and then because of my square dance background, get to choreograph their routines for the show.
Joe, what do you play? What instrument?
My major is piano and trumpet, but I play everything pretty much. The only thing I don't play is bagpipe.
Days young.
But I have time. Right now I'm playing tuba, trombone, French horn, trumpet, flugelhorn in a community band, trombone in a jazz band. So
Hopefully not all at the same time.
well, actually, in one concert band, I play tuba and flugelhorn and French horn interchangeably, depending on what part is needed. So it's a lot of fun. It's a variety. It's like calling a square dance.
Tony, I know you play a lot of piano. Do you have any other instruments?
Who, me? I just piano, and I don't play as much of that as I'd like. I did just find out this morning that our music minister got COVID, so I am playing all the hymns and the service music tomorrow morning. So I got to go from here and do a little practicing. I'm very rusty.
I also have fun because I'm a composer as well. So I get to go to a lot of the schools that are using my music or where I've been commissioned to write a piece for them. So between the square dancing and the music, my life is pretty full.
When you gave up music teaching, you didn't give up music completely.
No, not at all.
Good.
I taught right up and well, I went back and I filled in like I spent some time on Guam down in the South Pacific. Set up a music program for the University of Guam. So my main two features were the as a specialist was brass and percussion. So I still do clinics and those sort of things. But mostly it was the square dancing for many, many years. And then when I moved to Canada, you couldn't travel the way you could in the States. Like where I was in New York, I could be either up to Plattsburgh or down to Long Island in a matter of a couple of hours. So, or I would go over to Connecticut and east coast of Massachusetts, up to Vermont and New Hampshire, that kind of a thing. It was quite easy, but when I moved to Canada, to go to the next big city was like 5 hours and 6 hours, and they don't have the population base here they did in the States, so it wasn't all that profitable. So I did return to teaching for a couple of years here, along with calling square dancing. But it was good to be in the activity when it was its heyday. Even when I moved to Canada, I had a local club here with 15 to 20 squares of mainstream and plus. We did advanced C1, C2, C3A, and C3B. C4 was done by some local dancers and callers. Eventually, Barry Clasper got into that as well. So it was. I ended up going back to school actually in my 50s for aviation engineering, and so while I was calling, I wasn't calling full time. I was like calling maybe 4 nights a week, which was plenty enough in between the working for Bombardier and Spar. So, and now that I'm out here in the Calgary area, and I'm only here really for half of the year, so I'm not going to start any clubs. I just do guest calling. I've already got, where I'm doing caller clinics and filling in for different callers, sort of a thing. So I'm not a threat to the local population.
Joe, when you were in Eastern Canada, did you do any calling in the predominantly French areas?
Oh yeah, that was fun. For the most part, like even going into Montreal and whatnot. But it was funny because for many years when I was coming up to Montreal to call, a good majority of the dancers were from the Jewish community.
Mm-hmm.
So
Still
it was
are.
quite a combination of French, English, and Jewish. And there was a different culture as to how they behaved amongst each other in those groups. It was always fun to watch because it was like, well, there's that group and there's that group, and you could tell just by their body language what area they represented. But doing fun nights and whatnot for some of the French groups, oh man, because I'd say circle left and they go like gauche or whatever the word for left was. Eventually I could get a few of the words and do it that way, and they'd laugh at me, which was fun. And I found that the French in the community situations were much more lively than the rest, than the English speaking people. I mean, they were just, they were not ashamed to show their enthusiasm at all, which was always fun. It was really great fun.
In my calling for clubs or party nights, either way, I always had the philosophy of no matter what you did in the patter, snow them with singing calls, keep them entertained. And with that in mind, Clark, how do you exist? Clark doesn't do singing calls.
Yeah, no, I do square dance stuff and both one-time party dances and calling in the schools, but no singing calls.
Do people know about singing calls from having danced to other people and ask about it?
Never had it come up. I sometimes wonder if it's an annual gig and then I can't do it and they get a replacement. Does the replacement struggle because the people are used to my program and what I present versus what they're going to do? Yeah.
When you say it's never come up, I apologize for bringing it up.
There is an alternative to that. You can do singing calls if you use the right singing calls. You do the George Burns thing. Like I wish I was 18 again. You speak the verses. Just like George Burns did. And for the people that can sing, that adds a bigger variety yet, because you can do something like What a Wonderful World, and you can see, you can speak, I see trees of green, red roses too, blossoms of whatever, and blah, blah, blah. And then the very last phrase, sing. And it, you know, what a wonderful world. The variety is fantastic, but there's any number of singing calls you can do that way. Even things like when you're hot, you're hot. You can speak it, Put all the money in and let's roll them again. When you're hot, you're hot. You don't have to sing. The Battle of New Orleans, grabbed another alligator, filled his head with cannonballs, shot out behind it. I don't remember the verse, but you speak it instead of singing it, and that can kind of cover it. Les Sculpture, I don't know how many of you ever remember Les Sculpture. Okay, he had one singing call, the Battle of New Orleans, and the story was that the people that were getting him into call for a dance one time, they were helping him in with his stuff, and they said, "Well, where's your record case?" He says, he hands him a plastic bag with like 6 records in it, and they said, "Where's all your singing calls?" He said, "After you hear my one, you won't care."
You won't want any others?
Yeah. So but you can do it. You don't really have to do singing calls. I mean, the thing is, it's showmanship, and whatever is the showmanship, it doesn't mean you have to be like a fancy flair entertainer. It's just your own sense of humor is your showmanship many times. Your personality.
You remember Mike Turner, don't you, Joe?
Yes.
Yeah, he was another great entertainer, absolutely horrible singer.
Yeah.
He's the one that I talk about all the time. Great fella. He's the one that says couldn't carry a tune in the bucket if you wrote it on paper and nailed the bucket shut after it was inside. But fabulous caller, and he always filled his halls. And he ran that teen club for years and years and years, 200 dancers constantly at his dances till he turned it over to somebody that was a good singer, and it folded. And that's why I made the comment about teaching teens and high school students, because it folded because the person that took it over was a very good singer, but he was a high school principal, and he taught the kids as if he was a high school principal because they were all high school students, and the club folded within a year.
Wow.
There are 2 types of callers that can't sing, and fortunately Clark is in the better type. Some know that they can't sing and don't, and some just don't know they can't sing but do.
I guess everybody can sing. It depends on the degree of what can is.
Yeah, right. Well, you remember Jack Lasry.
Yes.
He was an awful singer, but what a lot of fun. The first time I heard him, it was in, I think, '69 at the National Convention in Louisville. And I'm walking into the building, and the house hall is right off to the left. And I hear, actually, before I even got in, coming out of the windows, "Why don't my dog bark, Billy?" And woo, woo, and all this. And I thought, who the heck is that? That's awful. It was Jack. And he had the floor going like crazy. So,
Yeah, but he used that to his advantage too.
Oh, well, certainly. He knew it. He knew how to milk it. Yeah.
Jack was one of those handful of callers that I used to think of as a caller's caller.
Oh.
As a caller, you go to him and you just have this feeling of this guy knows what's going on. And I'm loving every minute of it.
He moved the floor so well. I saw the floor in I think it was in Nashville, Tennessee, at the National. A very good entertaining caller was teaching in the advanced, or doing a workshop in the advanced hall. And the hall would hold maybe 40 squares. And he started out with a full floor. By the time he was done, there was about 6 squares left because he was doing such a lousy job. Jack followed him. The floor filled back up, and he had them doing hourglasses and whatever. they were fantastic. I mean, his teaching was impeccable. You know, just amazing.
Lost much too early.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
I think
okay,
Jack
well,
was like the art of war, teaching without teaching.
yes,
He could teach you just by talking to you on the floor, and it's like he's having a private conversation in the back of your head while he's calling.
mhm, absolutely. Well,
And when
I
he
gotta
spoke,
go.
people listened.
Mm.
Joe, thank you again.
Thanks for having us. I'm glad that you know there was a subject that came up. It's not something I do a lot of anymore, obviously.
But you still seem to remember a bit about it.
Yeah.
And there, in the past, people have expressed a lot of interest, and I think this covered a lot of the bases. And one of the things I found, we've been averaging 15 to 25 people at these things, but you look at the videos online, and there's 50 to 60 people that watch them afterwards. So
Oh, that's good.
a lot of
And
people are
and
listening.
that's what's really good about this, like sessions like these, Don, in particular, because a lot of newer callers have never faced or had that experience, and they'll walk into something with absolutely no prep, or they'll walk into it blind thinking, okay, I'm a new call, I'm just going in to call some dancing for some school kids. It should be pretty easy. It's just some basic dancing. And it's not. It's bloody hard. It takes more preparation to do a school dance than it does to call a regular dance sometimes, depending on if you know your audience. And the fact that these are here, the thoughts are shared, that's a resource that is disappearing because all the callers that have done it are disappearing.
Mhm.
And it's there, and it's very important. It's a great thing that you guys are doing.
Joe, I hope you will join us even just to partake in our social group every Saturday. We enjoy having you and your
Great.
things on it. There's always fun conversation afterwards, as well as pretty good presentations.
Yeah, yeah, great. Yeah, it's just it's very early in the morning for me, and you know, being retired, I have so many commitments. Like,
You're not getting sympathy for early mornings from me, Joe.
well, as soon as you get out of the jungle, I can
It's
see your background there.
that was my backyard. Those are parrots in my backyard.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm always in this room. I'm stuck here. I do
Yeah.
Zoom calling now, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yolanda can, you know.
Well,
Yes.
it's 3:25 in the morning, so you're not going to get sympathy for early mornings for me here.
Yes.
Oh man, good.
I learned to be very quiet about my 8 a.m.
Yeah.
getting up
No.
for this one.
No mercy. Yeah.
I wouldn't do it if it wasn't worth it.
Picking this hour for these sessions was a lot of thought of 8 a.m. for Eastern U.S., Western U.S. is possible for a lot of people, and it's still pretty good afternoon for Europe. And Doc signed out at 2 a.m. when he decided it was time to go to bed, but joined us this time because he was very interested, and Mel's always crazy staying up. Joe, we should let you go, and
Thank you.
hopefully others, because I'll sign off as soon as we do. But Tony, it's good seeing you back. You had to miss 2 or 3. I think Nefa was the first one. Definite priorities there.
That's good. Well, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, Joe.
Bye, Joe.
Catch you later.
Yes, definitely.
So with that, I'm going to end the series.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Okay,
Hello,
just remember your computer's going to take a while to convert it, so you got to leave it going once you log out.
Well, actually, I'm recording to the cloud this time, so I don't know how long that takes. But
Yeah, I have no idea. I made that mistake. I saw, okay, I'm done. And it's recorded. Shut it off and lost it all.
not so good.
Take
See you
care.
guys later.
Okay.
Bye.
See you later, Mel. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Oh.